My sister used my credit card without my permission and spent $2,487. When I confronted her, my mom blamed me for not sharing. That was the moment I realized that if they wanted to play unfair, I would play smarter. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Alora, I'm 28, and I work full-time. I was living at home to save money for my first apartment. My younger sister Marley is 22 and acts like the world owes her something. My mom, Dana, treats Marley like she's made of glass. No matter what Marley does, Mom excuses it. I thought living at home would help me save money faster, but I had no idea I'd be paying for more than rent and groceries. One morning, I received a fraud alert from my bank. It listed charges I didn't recognize. A spa, a clothing boutique, a makeup store, even a food delivery service. At first, I panicked. I thought someone had stolen my card. I called the bank, and they told me all the purchases were done locally. That made my stomach drop. I went back home, walked past Marley's door, and that's when I saw it, bags and boxes from the same places that showed up on the fraud alert. I felt sick. I walked inside her room, and there on her dresser was my credit card. When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes and said, "Relax, you make more money than me. I'll pay you back eventually." Then she went back to scrolling on her phone like nothing happened. I didn't yell. I just walked downstairs to tell Mom. Mom didn't even look surprised. She sighed and said, "Alora, she's your sister. Family shares." I stood there staring at her. "Sharing is asking first," I said, trying to stay calm. Mom shook her head and told me to stop attacking Marley and that I should apologize for making her uncomfortable. I was the one paying the bill, and yet I was the one apologizing. That's when something broke inside me. They didn't respect me. They only respected what I could give them. At the bank, I learned I could dispute the charges, but I needed a police report if the family member wouldn't admit responsibility. Mom refused to sign any papers, saying, "We don't report family." So I printed the police report form and kept it in my work bag. I decided to wait, not out of fear, but because timing matters. A week later, Marley asked if she could borrow my car. Mom jumped in and told me that because I lived at home, I should contribute more and be grateful to help the family. That night I realized that if I didn't stop this cycle, it would continue forever. I started gathering proof. Bank statements, receipts with Marley's signature, even our doorbell camera showing her carrying the packages inside. When everything was ready, I waited for the right moment. It arrived sooner than expected. A bank officer called my cell and asked if I was agreeing to co-sign a car loan with Marley. She had listed me as her financial guarantor without even asking. I finally spoke up. "No, and you should know she's currently under investigation for unauthorized use of my credit card." The loan was denied. Mom and Marley exploded. They begged me to fix it. I pulled out the evidence and filed the police report. Marley had to agree to a repayment plan or face charges. With the refunded money, I signed the lease for my own apartment. Moving out felt peaceful. No shouting, no guilt. Just freedom. Family doesn't mean allowing someone to walk over you. Boundaries are not disrespect. They are protection. The first sign that something was wrong arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning at work. I was drinking my coffee and going through routine emails when a notification popped up from my bank. I tapped it without thinking, expecting something small like a subscription renewal. Instead, bold letters stared back at me. Fraud alert. Unusual activity detected. My heart sped up. The alert showed several charges made in less than 24 hours. A spa appointment, a clothing boutique, a beauty store, and then the last one, a designer purse worth more than half my paycheck. At first, I thought maybe the system mixed me up with another customer. I rarely buy anything expensive. I usually track my budget down to the last dollar because every paycheck was going into my savings. There was no way I would splurge on any of these things. I called the bank right away. My voice trembled as I read the list of unfamiliar transactions. "Ma'am, someone used your card in person," the bank employee said. There were physical signatures on the receipts. My stomach dropped. If the purchases were made in person, that meant the card wasn't just being copied, it was physically in someone's hand. The bank froze the card to prevent more charges and suggested I check if it was still in my possession. I opened my wallet. The card slot was empty. I felt cold. My card wasn't missing as in lost in a parking lot. It was missing as in someone had taken it. I kept going through the details on the bank app. Each transaction included timestamps. They were all within the same neighborhood. The boutique listed was only a few miles away. The spa was even closer. Someone local. Someone with access to my things. I remembered I had left my wallet on the kitchen counter the previous night. I never thought twice about it, because who would take something from my wallet? Nobody in the house should have a reason to touch it. Trying to breathe, I walked out to my car during my lunch break, sat in the driver's seat, and closed my eyes. All I could think was, please let this be a mistake. I didn't want to believe the possibility forming in my mind. It felt too personal, too violating. After work, I drove home with a knot in my stomach. The house was quiet. My mom was in the living room watching TV, and Marley's door was closed. I walked past the hallway and something caught my attention. Leaning against the wall beside Marley's room was a glossy shopping bag. A boutique shopping bag. The same boutique listed on my fraud alert. My pulse hammered in my ears. I hesitated, then slowly reached for the doorknob of her room. It was unlocked. Inside, the room looked like a tornado had blown through. Clothes scattered everywhere, half-open makeup boxes on the floor, tissue paper from packaging tossed without care. In the middle of her bed sat a purse. The exact designer model from my fraud alert. The same price. The same color. I stepped closer. Underneath it was a long strip of glossy receipt paper, my bank card number printed across the top. Then I noticed a shoebox on the floor. Inside it were more receipts from the spa and boutique, stacked neatly like souvenirs. My chest tightened. There wasn't any confusion left. Someone hadn't stolen my card from a restaurant or copied it online. The person who used it lived under the same roof as me, and she didn't even try to hide it. I held the receipts in my hand as I walked downstairs. Each step felt heavier. I wasn't angry yet, just stunned. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, any explanation other than the obvious one. Marley was sitting on the couch, painting her nails like she had all the time in the world. I stopped in front of her and placed the receipts on the coffee table. She glanced at them, then looked up at me with a blank expression. "What's this?" she asked, blowing on her nails. "My card was used for these," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I found everything in your room. Did you take it?" She didn't deny it. She didn't look nervous. She simply shrugged and said, "Yeah, you make more money than me. It's not a big deal." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The simplicity in her voice hit me harder than any insult. No guilt, no apology, just entitlement. "It is a big deal," I said quietly. "You took something that wasn't yours. You signed my name. That's not borrowing." She rolled her eyes. "You weren't using it. I'll pay you back someday." Those words, someday, felt like a slap. She didn't understand that I worked hard to save every dollar. Budgeting wasn't a hobby for me. It was survival. And here she was acting like the card magically refilled itself. I took a deep breath. "You need to return everything. Today." Marley stood up, annoyed. "You're overreacting. It's just money." Before I could respond, our mom walked into the room, holding a basket of laundry. She noticed our tense faces and immediately assumed I was the problem. "What's going on in here?" she asked. I explained what had happened, showing her the receipts. I expected shock, or at least concern. Instead, she gave me a tired sigh like I was bothering her with a small inconvenience. "She's your sister," Mom said. "Family shares." I stared at her. I wasn't sure I heard correctly. "Sharing means asking first," I said. She didn't ask. Mom set the laundry basket down and crossed her arms. "Elora, you always stress about money. Maybe if you weren't so uptight, you'd understand that helping family is more important than some number in your bank account." My jaw tightened. "It's not about the amount. It's about respect." Mom shook her head. "You should apologize. You're making Marley feel guilty." I blinked, stunned. "Apologize? Me?" Marley leaned back on the couch with a satisfied look, like she just won something. "So, you want me to say sorry?" I said slowly, trying to process the absurdity of it. Mom nodded. "Yes. She feels attacked. You could have talked to her privately instead of making a scene." There was no scene. No shouting. Only truth. Yet somehow, I was the villain for speaking it. I felt something inside me go still, like a switch flipping. If this moment didn't show me where I stood in this house, nothing ever would. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I simply turned around and walked away, leaving the receipts on the table. Behind me, I heard Marley laugh quietly, confident she had Mom on her side. But something changed inside me that day. They expected me to apologize. Instead, I started planning. Not revenge out of anger, but boundaries born from betrayal. And once boundaries are drawn, there is no going back. The next week crawled by like a slow nightmare. I kept hoping that what happened would somehow fix itself. Maybe there would be a misunderstanding. Maybe someone would finally understand how serious this situation was. I held on to that hope longer than I should have. Then the statement arrived. A long list of payments printed in clean, official lines. A balance that made my stomach twist. No mistakes, no room for confusion. My name sat at the top, bold and unforgiving. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the numbers. My paycheck wasn't for luxury spending. I had been saving every cent for a future where I could finally move into my own place. Now that dream felt like it was slipping away, like water through my fingers. I took a deep breath and called the bank again. A representative explained that I could dispute the charges, but they needed a specific document, a signed statement from someone in the household confirming the unauthorized use. Without that, There was nothing they could do. The only way to move forward would be to prove the misuse officially. It sounded simple. Just one signature. One act of support. I walked into the living room where Mom was folding towels. My voice was steady. The bank said if you sign this, they can reverse the charges. She didn't even look at the paperwork. I'm not signing anything. It only confirms that I didn't approve what happened, I said gently, trying not to show how scared I felt. Her hands paused mid-fold. She gave me a look that held more judgment than comfort. We don't report family. This isn't about reporting anyone, I explained. It's about clearing the debt so I can breathe again. But she had already made her decision. She pushed the papers away like they were dirty. Stop making a big deal out of this. Let it go. Let it go. As if the balance would disappear if I pretended it wasn't there. As if stress and fear were something you could just decide not to feel. I stood there silently, realizing something I should have understood long ago. I was entirely alone in that house. Not physically, emotionally. No matter how much I gave, no matter how carefully I tried to keep peace, when I needed support, I was treated like I was asking for something unreasonable. Mom returned to folding towels, as if the conversation had never happened. I walked back to my room feeling like the weight of that statement was sitting on my chest. I sat on my bed, staring at the unsigned form. My thoughts raced. How was I going to cover all of this? I already worked full-time. I already budgeted. I skipped lunches sometimes to save money. And now I was responsible for something I had not even agreed to. That night, I lay awake listening to the house settle. The ceiling felt closer than usual, like the walls were closing in. There was no point arguing anymore. No one was going to rescue me. The people who should have stood next to me chose comfort over accountability. For the first time, I understood the truth, not in theory, but in bone-deep reality. If I didn't protect myself, no one else would. From that moment on, I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped expecting help, and I started preparing. The next morning, I walked into the bank with a knot in my throat. I didn't go to the teller this time. I asked to speak with someone in the back office. A financial specialist led me to a small glass room with neutral walls and a plant that looked exhausted from being indoors. I sat across from her, hands clasped tightly, trying not to fall apart. She reviewed my account notes, then spoke in a calm, steady voice. There is one option available if the charges were made without authorization. We can attach a fraud liability statement. I leaned forward. What do you need from me? She looked at me with sympathetic eyes. For us to legally protect you, you must file a police report. Once that's submitted, we can freeze the remaining balance and start the reversal process. A police report. The words hung in the air. A simple piece of paper, yet it carried weight. It carried consequences. It meant acknowledging that what had happened wasn't a misunderstanding or an innocent mistake. It meant putting it in writing. She slid a stack of forms toward me. Her tone softened. This will help you. You shouldn't have to pay for something that wasn't yours. I held the papers. They felt heavy even though they were just a few sheets. After thanking her, I walked back to my car and sat in the driver's seat. The building's reflection stretched across the windshield. I stared at the forms for a long time. My hands trembled as I traced the section that asked for suspect information. Suspect. Seeing that word made everything real in a way nothing else had. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. Part of me wanted to rush straight to the nearest police station and hand the papers to whoever stood behind the counter. I imagined the process, imagined everything being handled the correct and legal way. I imagined the relief. But then a different thought slid into my mind. If I filed now, she'd learn nothing. She would cry. Mom would defend her. I'd be painted as the cruel one. And then nothing would change. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The air inside the car felt still, as if the world paused long enough to let me think clearly. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about anger. It was about timing. Act too soon, and they'd twist it. Wait long enough, and the truth would expose itself. I opened my eyes, placed the paperwork back in the envelope, and smoothed the flap closed. I didn't tear it. I didn't throw it away. I walked inside, set it gently into my work bag, and zipped it shut. The forms would stay with me. Not hidden. Just waiting. That night, while everyone else in the house was asleep, I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about how quickly trust can turn into something sharp. I felt a quiet shift inside me, not loud, not dramatic. It wasn't fire or rage. It was clarity. Rushing into action would make me look desperate. Waiting would give me strength. Waiting would give me control. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need anyone's approval. All I needed was the right moment. The envelope stayed in my bag, tucked beside my planner and wallet. Its weight reminded me every day that I had a choice. Not for revenge, for the perfect timing. The night that changed everything didn't begin with tension. It began with roasted chicken, steamed vegetables, and a table set like we were trying to play Happy Family. Mom insisted we all sit down for a proper dinner together. I agreed, mostly because I was tired of walking on eggshells and pretending everything was normal. We ate quietly for a few minutes. I focused on cutting my food into small pieces, counting down the minutes until I could escape to my room. Then Mom casually wiped her hands on a napkin and looked straight at me. "Elora," she said, "I think it's time you start letting your sister use your car whenever she needs it." My fork froze midway to my mouth. "What? You heard me." Mom spoke with the certainty of someone announcing the weather. "She needs transportation, and you don't have kids or responsibilities. It's only fair." Across the table, Marley chewed her food with a smug little curl of her lips. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. It was clear they had discussed this already. I forced myself to swallow. "My car is not a community resource," I said quietly. Mom leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised, like I was the unreasonable one. "You drive to work and back. That's it. The rest of the time it just sits in the driveway. Meanwhile, your sister has places to be." I stared at her, unsure if I should laugh or cry. "I paid for it. I pay for insurance, gas, maintenance. Why would she have automatic access to it?" Mom gave me a pitying look, the kind reserved for someone who just doesn't understand. "You're single. You have time. You're not supporting anyone. That makes you flexible." Certain words have a way of cutting deep even when spoken softly. Single, flexible, not supporting anyone. Like my life held less value because it didn't match her expectations. Marley finally spoke, voice dripping with fake innocence. "It would save me money on rides, and you barely use the car anyway. Why be selfish?" Selfish. The word hit harder than it should have. I wasn't the one taking things without asking. I wasn't the one expecting others to carry my responsibilities. Yet somehow, in their version of the world, I was the problem. "I'm not selfish," I said, steadying my voice. "I'm protecting what I worked for." Marley smirked. "Relax. We're family." That smirk was the spark. A slow realization spread through me like heat. They didn't see me as a person with boundaries. They saw me as a resource, a walking bank account, a free ride, someone whose hard work existed to make their lives easier. Mom folded her napkin with finality, like the discussion was settled. "Starting tomorrow, she can borrow your keys whenever she needs them. That is not up for debate." I looked at both of them. Their expressions were confident, entitled, and in that moment, something inside me clicked. They would keep taking as long as I kept saying yes. They would continue crossing lines as long as I stood still. This wasn't about a vehicle. It was about control, about respect, about my independence. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. Instead, I sat back, feeling a calm certainty settle over me. They weren't going to stop, so I would. They thought they were about to gain more access to my life. Instead, they lit the fuse, and I was ready to act. The moment Elora stepped into her small home office, the room felt colder than usual. Not from the temperature. She just finally saw everything clearly. Beneath the surface of polite smiles and shared dinners, someone had been draining her light. She powered on her laptop. The glow of the screen lit half of her face, the rest hidden in shadow. She opened her financial app and slowly scrolled. Numbers she didn't recognize, transfers she never approved, purchases from stores she'd never been to. Her pulse thudded in her throat. Marley did this. Elora didn't rant, didn't throw anything. Instead, she clicked download on every suspicious transaction. The digital folder grew, file after file, each one a piece of a puzzle she hadn't realized she'd been living inside of. She printed them, placed each page on her desk, and smoothed the corners like she was preparing courtroom exhibits. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm, her anger focused. Next, she moved on to the receipts. She looked through the drawer where the family stored random paperwork. She never used it much, but Marley did. Buried under expired coupons were receipts with a familiar looping signature. Marley's handwriting, not even disguised. Elora placed them beside the financial records. "You signed using my accounts." She felt a burn in her chest, not pain. Power. Then came the video proof. Elora opened her security app. She tapped to play the feed from her front door. Clip after clip began to queue. Packages arriving, drivers handing them off, Marley taking them inside. Sometimes dressed casually, sometimes dolled up like she was preparing for a night out. Timestamps, dates, delivery tracking numbers, all matching the withdrawals. Proof. Undeniable. Elora copied the clips onto a thumb drive. The tiny device felt heavier than steel. When everything was organized, she sat in silence. The noise of betrayal had finally gone quiet inside her mind, leaving only clarity and purpose. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number of the investigator assigned to financial cases. He had helped her months ago with a different matter. She remembered his calm voice, his precision. He answered on the second ring. "This is Detective Rowan." "It's Elora," she said. "I think I have something you should see." Her voice didn't shake. They scheduled a meeting within the hour. At the station, The air smelled faintly of old carpet and coffee that had been sitting far too long. Elora laid her folder and USB drive on his desk. Detective Rowan flipped through the bank records first, brows lowering. Then he examined the receipts, matching dates and amounts. Finally, he inserted the thumb drive and clicked through the videos. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and looked at her with an expression halfway between disbelief and admiration. Whoever did this, he said, wasn't sloppy. They were confident you'd never notice. Elora didn't respond. She didn't need to. He tapped the paperwork with the end of his pen. This is enough for a formal case, he said. His voice turned firm, decisive. What you're dealing with is identity theft. The words hit her like a gavel. Elora didn't blink. She didn't gasp. She only nodded once. So what happens next? She asked. Detective Rowan gave a thin smile. The kind professionals give when they know how a story will end before the villain ever sees it coming. Next, we let her bury herself with her own grief. The day began quietly enough. Elora was sorting documents at her desk when her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize flashed across the screen. Local bank. She hesitated only a second before answering. Hello, this is Elora speaking. A polite voice responded. Good afternoon, Ms. Hart. We're calling to verify your authorization as a co-signer on a vehicle loan application submitted this morning. The applicant listed is Marley Hart. We just need verbal confirmation that you approve. For a split second, everything around Elora seemed to freeze. Marley had actually done it. She didn't just steal. She escalated. Elora inhaled slowly, letting her breath settle into calm control. She sat straighter in her chair, eyes narrowing, not with anger, but with certainty. Her tone was measured. Level. Professional. No, she said. I do not authorize anything. The representative paused. I'm sorry, did you say you do not approve the co-signing? Elora's voice was smooth as glass. Correct. And you should also be aware that Marley is currently under investigation for credit fraud involving my financial account. Silence. Not the kind of silence filled with confusion. The kind that falls when someone realizes they just touched a live wire. I understand, the representative finally said, voice tightening. Thank you for informing us. In that case, we will deny the loan application and note the reason in our internal report. No problem, Elora replied, her voice utterly calm. I appreciate you calling to verify before proceeding. The call ended. She leaned back in her chair, letting the moment settle. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. This was precision. Across town, chaos erupted at the dealership. Marley walked out of the finance office, gripping the rejected paperwork like it was an insult. She stormed toward her mother, heels clacking angrily against the polished floor. The excitement she'd worn earlier, bragging about getting a luxury car by the end of today, had vanished. They denied it, she snapped, voice cracking. The bank actually denied it. Her mother blinked, confused. Denied? That makes no sense. You said Elora would co-sign. I listed her. Marley hissed. She didn't have to do anything. They just needed the paperwork. Then why was it denied? Marley threw the papers down on a glass table, pacing like a caged animal. They said she told them I'm under investigation. She whispered the last part like it was poison. Her mother's expression shifted from confusion to panic. Under investigation for what? Marley pressed both hands into her hair. Credit fraud or something. I don't know how she even knows about that. Her mother stepped closer, gripping Marley's arms. You told me she wouldn't find out. I thought she wouldn't. Marley nearly screamed. I checked the accounts carefully. I erased notifications. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing something. Elora knew everything, and Elora wasn't reacting emotionally. She was moving quietly, intentionally. That realization hit harder than the loan denial. Marley's breathing turned shallow. She's setting me up, piece by piece. Her mother swallowed hard. What are we going to do? For the first time, Marley had no plan, no smug confidence, no control. Elora had all of it. Back at home, Elora closed her laptop and clasped her hands together in front of her. The first real consequence had landed, without her raising her voice, without confrontation, without warning. And this was only the beginning. She wasn't done. Not even close. The morning she decided to finish everything, Elora woke up before sunrise. The house was still. No voices, no footsteps. Just quiet and a thin line of light coming from the hall. She picked up her folder, the one she had been building in silence for weeks. Inside were printed bank statements, signed receipts, time-stamped delivery footage, and the forms she had held onto, waiting for the right moment. Today was that moment. She drove to the police station. The detective from earlier recognized her as soon as she entered. Do you have everything ready? Wordlessly, she placed the entire folder on his desk. He opened it, flipping through the pages. This is solid, he said. Once we file this, it becomes official. No one can convince you to undo it without legal steps. Elora nodded. I understand. The detective went through the statement slowly, typing each detail with care. When he reached the part confirming Marley used her identity for purchases, he paused. Are you sure you want to go forward? Elora remembered the arguments. The blame. The way she was told she should apologize for being the one stolen from. She didn't hesitate. Yes, I'm sure. He stamped the report, slid a copy to her, and said, Here's your case number. Give this to your bank. They'll take over from here. Elora felt something lift from her shoulders. Not joy. Not triumph. Clarity. Next stop, the bank. The financial dispute representative guided her to a private office. Do you have documentation? Elora placed the stamped report on the desk, followed by the receipts with Marley's signature and the doorbell camera still images. The representative skimmed the case number and sat up straighter. This changes everything. Once a police report is filed, you're no longer responsible for the charges while we investigate. Elora exhaled, slow and steady. We'll contact the person who made the transactions, he continued. They'll be given 2 options, pay the balance or face legal proceedings. He scanned the final form and handed her a document to sign. We'll handle the rest. For the first time in weeks, Elora felt her chest loosen. That evening, everything exploded. Her mother burst into her room without knocking, waving papers as though they were burning. What did you do? Her mother shouted. Elora closed her laptop and looked at her calmly. I handled it. You filed a report against your own sister? Her mother's voice cracked with disbelief. How could you do something like that? Elora remained seated, steady. She used my identity. She spent my money. She left me with the bill. It's just money, her mother yelled. You're ruining her future. No, Elora said, standing up. She endangered mine. Her mother stepped closer, eyes desperate. Just call them and undo it. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Elora didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain the paperwork. She didn't justify her choice. She simply said one sentence. Plain, calm, final. Family doesn't steal. Her mother froze. Her face dropped. She had no answer to that. Outside the door, Elora could hear Marley crying in the hallway, begging her mother to fix it. No one came to Elora with apologies. No one offered to repay what had been taken. Instead, for the first time, they faced the reality of their actions. Elora packed her bag and walked past them on her way to the front door. She didn't rush. She didn't hide the police report copy she carried. Marley whispered after her, voice shaking. Are you really doing this? Elora didn't look back. I already did. She stepped outside, locked the door behind her, and finally, chose herself. A week later, the house felt different, lighter, almost hollow. The storm of accusations, threats, and pleading had finally passed. Elora sat at the kitchen table, a single pen in hand, while Marley signed a document that confirmed she would repay every cent taken from her sister's accounts. The signature was sloppy, hurried, but it didn't matter. It was final. Marley avoided Elora's eyes. She shifted on the chair, tapping her fingers against the table. No excuses, no defiance. Only a reluctant acknowledgement that her actions had consequences. Mom hovered in the background, wringing her hands. Her voice was softer now, tinged with shame. Elora! Elora didn't interrupt. She had heard enough. The apology wasn't the point. The point was that fairness had been restored, and she was no longer the victim of endless entitlement. With the repayment agreement complete, Elora felt a calm she hadn't felt in months. She collected the paperwork, folded it neatly, and placed it in her folder. Every sheet was a reminder that she had taken control, not through anger, not through yelling, but through planning and patience. That afternoon, she packed the last of her belongings into boxes. Her new apartment awaited, a modest space but entirely hers. The rent had been covered by the refunded money from the bank, along with a small additional payment Marley had agreed to include as compensation for damages. For the first time, she realized she wasn't moving out of fear. She was moving out of empowerment. As she loaded the last box into her car, her phone rang. The screen flashed Mom's name. She hesitated for just a moment before answering. Elora, I want to say I'm sorry, her mother said. The words came slowly, each one weighted with regret. I should have believed you from the start. I shouldn't have let Marley take advantage of you. Elora listened quietly. She didn't feel the need to argue, to justify, or to explain her actions. The damage had been addressed, and the lesson had been learned. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you for saying that." When she arrived at her new apartment, she carried the boxes inside and set them down with a sense of finality. The space smelled faintly of fresh paint and promise. Every corner felt like a blank page waiting for her to write her next chapter. For the first time, she could decide exactly how she wanted her life to unfold, without interference or expectation from those who had taken advantage of her. She placed the last box in the living room and looked around. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the small but tidy space. Elora allowed herself a small smile. Being family didn't mean letting someone walk all over you. Boundaries weren't disrespect. they were protection. She unpacked slowly, savoring the quiet independence she had fought to secure. No one could undermine her again. No one could make her feel powerless. Every document she had prepared, every careful step she had taken, had led her here, to safety, to freedom, to her own choices. As she sat on the edge of her new couch, sipping a cup of coffee, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known existed. This wasn't just a move. It was a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Alora was exactly where she needed to be, completely in control of her life, her money, and her future. Do you think I handled my sister and mom the right way, or should I have forgiven them sooner? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and hit the bell.